Hello, my friend. Today we are going to create a service to get our boards. We are going to make the CRUD applications. So in CRUD, we are going to do the R part, like reading all the posts, like implement logic to get all boards data from the database. So you can implement this logic in service. We can actually implement this logic directly with the database, but we are not going to do with the database right now because I think it can be a little bit confusing if we connect the database from the beginning. So first we want to focus on Nest.js a basic feature. We are going to do it first without the database, just the boards array, and we put all the boards data inside in here, inside this local memory, not in the real database. We will do it later, but now we just want to focus on the Nest.js feature. So we will store the post data, like a board data, in the boards array. And the reason for using private here is that if you do not use a private, other components can access this board service and modify the value of this board array. And so first we go to the text editor and then just put this boards inside the source code. So first we need to come to the board service. We are going to treat the database related things inside the service. So that's why we need to come in here first. So private and then boards and array. So we are going to put the data, like the boards data inside in here. And we come in here and we need to make the method get all boards. So to get all boards data contained in the board variable, you can use the get all boards method. Or how do I call these methods? When a client sends a request, it first gets on the controller and routes the request according to the controller. So we will treat it like this. These boards. We will get all the data that is inside this array. So we can just uh, make the method in here. The method name is the get all boards and then return this board. We are returning this property like all the boards data that is in this array. So if we return this one, that client can get all the boards data. And we need to use this method inside the board controller in here. We need to get this one from this controller. So how can we get it? So like this. First, we will get the client request in the controller. When the controller get that request, we need to have HTTP method according to that request and that pass. We also need to get the pass. First, we need to go to the controller. Inside that's the board controller here. We need to make the handler to deal with the request that's coming from the client. So first there will be the get request, and then we need to put the pass. But if that is just a root, we don't need to type it like this. And then this handler's name is get all boards return. We need to use the border service because the uh, define this method inside the border service. But when we use this border service inside this controller, we said before we actually need to do the dependency injection. So this is time we need to do that dependency injection. So dependency injection can be done with this constructor class. So we need to put that constructor and private and board service and board service. Automatically we can import it like that. Need to get the constructor body here and then Now we can use this board service parameter property. So we put it in here, and then we can use this get all boards method. We define it in here inside this service. So like we made a handler and the method well, so now we can actually send a request, but we don't have a client right now, but we can use the postman for the client, like for sending a request to the Nest.js application. So I'm going to just turn on the postman. If you don't have a postman, you can just go to postman website and then just download it. It's really straightforward. So we can come to the postman, and I give the pass localhost 3000 because the we are our application will be running on the port 3000. So it will be localhost to 3000, and then the pass will be the port. So I'm going to run the application first, dev. So our application is running, and then I will just send the request in here. So you can see this array, empty array, because the our inside our service, our array is empty. So that's why we get the empty string back. So summary, like when a client send a request, it goes to the controller first, and the controller allows it to the appropriate request to pass to the handler. Inside the handler, we need to get this handler based on that request. After that, it goes into the service to handle the request. It goes to the service, handle the request. So after that, as the service handles the logic for the request and send a return value to the controller. After deleting the request, return the value to the controller, and the controller send the result to the client, and then the controller send that result to the client. So the controller is responsible for handling the request and returning the result value. So thank you for watching this video, and in our next video we will define the board model. See you later. Hello my friends, today we are going to define the board model. So we are doing the CRUD application, and we did the our part, like bringing all the board data, like board data. We try to get that, and now it's time to create board, like the C part in CRUD. But before creating that function, like creating board, but we first want to define the property for that board. Like a board need ID and name and description. We actually define them, the ID and name and description, inside the model part. Like so first we need to make the model file. The name is the board model TS. So and to define the model, like we can use the class or interface. So if we use the interface, we can only check that type of the variable. But if we use the class, we can check the type of the variable, and we can also create an instance as well. But we just need to check the type of the variable, or no need to create the instance. So that's why we are just going to use that interface for the model. So first, in order to define only the structure of the board, so we will use interface. So create a board model. We need to create a board model file. So, and we go to the text editor here, and then we try to make that board model.ts. Inside in this model file, we need to define model for that board. So board need the ID and title and description and status. This one is for the private or public status. ID could be string, and title is string, and description is string, and status. First, we just put them in our social code. So we are going to use the interface for the board, and the board ID is a string, and title, we need the title for that board, that would be string, and description will be string again, and status needs to be the, so like if we come in here, distributing whether this post is public or private. So, and since it cannot come out other than these two states, so it only needs to have the public or private. So we will use enumeration as a function of a TypeScript, so that only these two states can come out. So we only need these two states. So we are using the TypeScript function, that is the enumeration. So we are doing like this. So export enum, and board status, and public is public, and private is private. We come in here, can do it like this: export enum, board status, public, public, and private, private. And we use this board status enum in here, so we can uh, define this status type as a board status. So if you put board status defined using enum in status like this, you can use only public or private status the board status has put in. So now we made that board model. So by using that board model, we can actually define the type using the created board model. So define, so first we can give the type to the board variable. So we made this board variable, this array, but we can give the type for this board variable, creating the service and the value returned by the method. Even for this method return these boards, so that means it's array. All the board data will be inside in here. So when this one returns, it will return this board type. So we can give the type by using this created board model. Not even in service, if we go to the controller, we can also use this model to define this type, return type. So first we go to the service part. We go to the service part, board service. We can actually define this board property. We need to use the board model, but this board is not object. This one is array, but this type is just for one object, but we need array, so we need to put this one like that. And even this method also return board. And now we go to the controller part. This handler also return the board array, board array. So now, yeah, we define all the type we can just right now. So why is it good to define a type like this? So defining the type is optional, not essential. However, since the type is defined like this, an error occurs when using a code that is different from the desired type. And from the perspective of reading the code, it is easier to understand and read the code. It can be readable by just defining the type for any variable or function or anything. So thank you for watching this video, and see you later. Hello my friend, today we are going to create a post. This one is for the service part. Like we actually defined the board model before, but now it's time to create a post. So create a post creation function. So now that we have defined the model for the post, we will create a post like a board creation function. To create a function, the place that handle logic related to post is service, not controller. You can do it in controller too, but it's better to do it in service. So after handling the logic in service first, we will call the service in the controller. So first we do it, we deal with the logic inside the service, and we bring the method inside this the controller. So first we need to make this source code inside the service, like that. This one is the method named the create board. We need the title and description. We need to get from the client. Client need to type the title for the board and the description for the board. And if that is sent to the Nest.js application, first it goes to controller. So when we make this create board method by using this title and description, and we also need to give the status. Status, the default value is the public. You can change it into private, but for me, it's better for me to give the default value of public. So I put it like that. So I made one board to create a board. So if we come in here, inside this service, we need to make the method for creating a board. Then name will be create board. And when we create the board, we need to get the title. And title, so type is string, and descriptions type is string. Inside this method, we need to make the board object. So board, and board type will be board model, and we need to make the board object in here. So we need to give the title. For this property, we need to give the real value. Real value will be title we get from here that client gives, and the description will be description. But in ES6 JavaScript, we can just omit this part if this key and value is same. So we need to omit this part too. We also need to give the property status. We need to define this one. I want it to be the public for the default value, but if you type that, you can get the two options, private or public. That is because we give the uh, type or the status with the enumeration. So it is really good because the only public and private can be applied in here. So we just made the board object. We need to put this one, we need to add this one inside this array. That is easy. Just you can this board and push it, and you can just put this board. So you can put this board object into this array, and then you can also return board or newly created board. You can return it to the client. But we got the error in here. The reason is that when we define this board model, we also give this ID. So we also need to put the ID in here. But originally, when we use the database, database itself make the ID automatically. So we don't need to deal with that, but we are not using the database right now. We actually need to manually create the ID, but this ID need to be unique. So we are using the UUID module to make the unique ID. So if we come in here, how do I handle post IDs? ID must be unique for every post, every board. So when you put data into the database, the database automatically gives you a unique value. However, since the database is not currently used, a unique value must be randomly assigned. Or in this case, you can use several methods, but I will give a unique value using the UUID model. So to use the UUID model, we can just install UUID, but it is really easy. Like type npm install UUID save. So we can come inside our text editor, npm install UUID and save to install the UUID module. Now we got that UUID module installed, and then to use it, import v1 as UUID from UUID module. So UUID has a lot of version. We are going to use the version 1 of the UUID, but when we use the UUID, the name will be UUID. So we can bring it like that, UUID and UUID. So if we do it like that, the UUID automatically create the unique ID for us. So now we make the create board cert method right now. So in our next video, we will make the controller part for the create board, like because we did it for the service part. So we will do it later in our next video. Thank you for watching this video and see you later. Hello my friend, it's time to create board for the controller parts. So if you have a process the logic part, like now like logic part inside this service, now process the request and response part. The request and response part are handled by the controller. How do I get the values sent from the client in the handler? This value is like the body, like the title of the board and the description of the board. So if a user type the title and description, we need to get it inside this Nest.js application. So by using the title and description, we can put them inside the database to create that board. So how can we get the value? So when we use the Express.js, we use the body parser module. Even though that is the deprecated right now, so we can just use Express for that parsing the data. But anyway, so we can just get it like request the body has received the value sent from the client, or how to get it from Nest.js. Like we get it like request the body inside the Express.js, but how can you do it inside of Nest.js? So in Nest.js, it is imported using a body decorator. So this way you can get the values sent by or request to get them one by one. So like if we use this like body inside this body, all the value like the title and description, all values are inside its body. But if we use it like this, body decorator and specific the property like the title. If we need the title inside this title, so that we can get only title value. If we get only description of property like inside this description, we can get only the description value. So you can choose it either way. So now we send the value so that the service can process the logic. So when the values sent from the request are received from the controller, the service must process the logic using this value, so we pass it as a parent. So first, inside this controller, we actually need to send title and description to the service. So in our last video, we got this, when we made this create board method, we get this title and description. So when we made this board object, we use it, but we actually need to get it from the controller. So we need to first make this handler to post, because this HTTP method, when we create the board, we use the post method. So this request handler's name will be create board, and we need to get that value like title and description. That will be body for title, and title string body description and description. string, and this one return only board, return like this board service, create board. We already create this method inside this service. Like we are using this service right now inside the controller. So when we call this method, we actually need to give this title and description like that. So now we finished making this board creation function. Now we can actually test this function with Postman. So first we are going to run our application npm run star dev, and then turn on the Postman, and we come in here, post HTTP request, and then path will be localhost 3000 and then boards, and inside its body, okay, I'm going to give the like title, and then title will be board title, and then we also need to give description, board description. So I'm going to just send it here. So this ID is created by the UUID automatically. This one is so unique. And then title is a board title we give from the client, and description. And the status, the default value is the public. So thank you for watching this video, and see you later. Hello my friend, today we are going to talk about data transfer object, which is DTO. Like the first, we want to know what is a data transfer object. An object for exchanging data between layers. It is an object used to get data from the DB and send it to service or controller. And DTO is an object that defines how data is transmitted over a network. It can be defined using an interface or class. However, Nest.js recommends using class. So we briefly know what is the DTO right now. So why we need to use the DTO? That is so important. We need to know why. DTO is for efficient in checking data validity, and it makes the code more stable. It is also used as a type in TypeScript. So if you come in here, we see the data flow in the Nest.js. So first, the client made a request into client. Inside the request, we put the title and then description for the board we want to make. So the title and description will be in here and in here and in here. So if we need to change just the one property, like we need to put any other property in here. So we actually need to put that other newly created property need to be here and here. But if we need three more property, we need to put three more property here and here and here. Actually, we are having only controller and service right now, but later we also need to create the repository, and we need to put more property. So it becomes really complicated. So this way, like we type everything in here can be really messy. So that's why we need the DTO. DTO can solve this problem. So if you look at the flow of data processing in Nest.js, the properties for the board are being used in several places. Title, description, several places. This one, this one, this one. And since we are creating a simple application right now, we only need to call a few property and call them in only few places. But what if you have so many property, use them in many places, and suddenly need to change the property name in one place? Then you have to change the same property everywhere that are used the same in other places. This can make your application really hard to maintain. In this case, you can use DTO to solve this problem. So in our next video, we are going to create the DTO and apply to that our application. So thank you for watching this video and see you later. Hello my friend, today we are going to create the DTO for creating post. So because we learned about DTO in previous lectures, in these times we will actually create a DTO for creating a board. So to create a DTO file, so inside the board folder, we make a folder named DTO, and inside the DTO folder, we create a file named create board DTO.ts. So we come to our text editor in here, inside the board folder, make the folder name DTO, and then inside DTO folder, create board DTO.ts. And if you come in here, DTO file creation, the classes are more useful when taking advantage of features like pipes because they work at runtime differently from the interfaces. So I use classes to write DTOs. So for DTO, we can use the class or the interface, but the class work at runtime differently from the interfaces. So that's why I am using the class for the DTO. So we come to our create board DTO TS. So I'm going to define the export and class create board DTO. So we need the title and string and the description. We will put this DTO instead of, like, if you come in here, like we are just giving this title and description. Like we need to type title and description both even in here, but we put this title and description inside the DTO create board DTO. We don't need to put both of them like this. We can just use the DTO in here. So applying DTO, we need to apply DTO, so because we just created. So after creating the DTO like this, so we will apply the DTO in the actual controller and service. First, we will apply it to the controller. So we come in here. So we just remove this part and create board DTO, and we need to give the create board DTO we just created. So inside this create board DTO, we can get the title and description both. And even in here, like we get this property, we put it in here. But we get the error in here because this method actually expect two arguments, but we actually put only one argument right now. So we actually need to change this method to we are using title. We put two parameters in here, but we only have the one parameter right now, that is the create board DTO, and this type is the create board DTO. So now we get two error again, but inside this create board DTO parameter, so we can get the title, like the const title and the description create DTO like this. You know, like the const title and create DTO title is actually same as this one, and even for description, by using this structuring syntax, we can do it like that. So okay, so now we finish applying the DTO for our service and then controller. So thank you for watching this video. In our next video, we will make feature to get specific post by ID. So see you later. Hello my friends, today we are going to make a feature to get specific fold by ID. Like when we just get the board, we can get all boards, and we can also get specific board by ID or a name or a description. So this time we will get specific board by ID. So we will implement a function to fetch a specific board using ID. So we first make the service, and then we will make the controller as we always did. So first, inside the service, we can do it like this. We will find the specific board by ID. So we use the find method. So first we go to that service, board service, to make that. So board service in here, we can make it in here. That name may be, method name may be get board by ID, and we will get the ID that comes from the client. The client wants to find a specific board by ID, so that ID will be string, and we also need to give the return type will be just the board, because the board will be just one. And inside this boards array, we are going to find this one board. We get the one board here, and then board and ID. If that is the same ID we got from the client, that's the one we are looking for. And then we also need to make the controller. So when we make the controller, we need to get the ID param. So the path will be boards and ID, and then when we get that, so like this one is like that. So local host to 3000 port and boards, and then the ID is like this. We want to find the board that has this ID. So this one is this ID, and then we need to get this board ID. So to get this one, we need to use this param decorator. When we get the body, we use the body decorator, but this time we need to get this param named ID, because we defined it here as ID. So to get this param, ID param, so we need to do it like this param. So we pass it in here as an argument. So again, we go to controller part and then make that handler. So in here, yeah, we use the get HTTP method, and we also need to give the path, that is the ID, and that get board by ID, and param and ID will be string, board, the return value will be, return type will be board, and this is the board service, and we already made this get board by ID method. So okay, so yeah, we finished making this function to get specific board. So like in our next video, we can delete the specific post by ID. So see you later. Hello, my friend. Today we are going to implement a function to delete a specific board using ID. So this time we are using the ID again to delete it this time. Before it was trying to find the specific board by ID, but this time deleting. This time again, we are going to make the service first and then the controller. When we delete the specific board, we are going to use the filter method. So we come to our Visual Studio Code inside the service. In here, this method's name will be delete board, and we get the ID from the client, and we are not going to like return anything. So this board and this board and filter, and we get all the boards in here, and board ID, is different from this ID. By using it like this, so we can actually delete the specific board, and we need to get this one from the controller. Inside this controller, we also need the ID again, so path will be like that. So we need to get that ID by using this param decorator again. So comes in the controller. This one is for the deleting, so we need to use the delete HTTP method, and the path will be the ID. The handler name will be delete board. We need to get it from the param, so the param's name will be ID. We define it here, and then ID and string. The return value will be void. We are not going to return anything. So this board service and delete board, and we give the ID as argument. So now we finish making the delete function again, and thank you for watching this video, and see you later. Thank you. Hello my friend. Today we are going to update the task of a specific post. So we will implement a function to update the status of a specific board. This time again, we are going to make the service first and the controller. So when we update the board, actually we need to get the board data by ID, because we need to update the specific board. After getting all the specific board data, only we can change status value. So like if you see here, like by using the get board by ID method, we will put that ID as an argument, and we will use this method, and then inside this uh, object, board object, we get the specific board's data, like the title and description and status. And inside the data, we can only change the status, so we can update the board status. And then after making this service, and we can also make the controller. So first we type this update board status. I'll come to our board service. So in here, update board status ID string status uh, status. We are going to change status. We also need to status value which we want to change into, like, so this one's type is board status. So the return type will be board, and then const board this get board by ID. We made this method in here, like in here. So we need to put the ID. We get it from the client ID. We want to update this specific board by using the ID. So, and we got this board data inside in here, and we want to change all the status. That is the status. We get it from here, and then we want to return that updated the board like this. So we made it in service in here, and we need to change it in the controller. We are using the patch HTTP method. So, and then the path will be, we need the ID, we get it from the param, and then the status, we put the status behind this ID, and then we get the ID value from the param, and we also need to get the status value, but that is not from the param, that is from the body. So we will also make this controller inside in controller, type the patch, and the path will be ID and status. Update board status, and param, the name is ID, ID type string, body status status board status return this board service and update the board status. uh, this method take two arguments. First argument is the ID and second one is status. So it's done for the updating the status of specific post. So thank you for watching this video, and you can just test this one with the Postman. So that's better. So thank you and see you later.